Welcome to the Pickleball Recovery Podcast, where we highlight products and practices to help you feel better faster, so you can spend less time stiff, sore, and injured, and more time on the court doing what you love. This podcast is sponsored by AlloMD. Don't just mask pain, eliminate it. AlloMD provides intense relief and advances continual repair for both acute injuries and chronic pain. All-natural, patented technology developed by doctors to get you back in the game fast without the use of opioids, steroids, or NSAIDs. AlloMD, harnessing the power of pure natural ingredients that provide deep, penetrating repair. Patented, validated, natural. Learn more at www.allomd.com and make sure to use the discount code PBR at checkout to save $5 off your order. What's up? Welcome to Pickleball Recovery. I'm your host, Tim Ringgold. How you doing? Nice to be with you today, wherever you are. Did you play any pickleball today? I hope so. Hope you're getting out there. Good time of year, usually, for pretty much anywhere to play. And I'm really excited about today's interview because I had the joy of meeting Justin at a pickleball tournament. He walked up to the AlloMD Ultimate Repair X booth. And I was like, what's up? And you're wearing an arm band, one of those things on the forearm. Tell me about it. And he was like, well, it's my company. And I was like, whoa, okay. Tell me more. And so we struck up a conversation and hit it off. And then, you'll hear in the interview how I got to meet him again at a subsequent tournament and actually try one of his products. And like night and day, instant difference. Yep, just like that. Not unlike the first time I put AlloMD on, not unlike the first time I wore compression boots, not unlike first time I used Firefly Recovery. There's a lot of products that I've used along the way that have instantly made a difference. And this one made the list, instantly made a difference for me. So I was really excited to get him on here to share with you his company and how they help people with arm issues and leg issues. So you can find out more about Justin and his company online. I think it's proband.com, and we shout out the different places in the show notes and in the interview. So please go check out their stuff. It's really, really impressive. And you might know somebody who's struggling with tennis elbow. I certainly do. You might be struggling with tennis elbow. I certainly do, and didn't realize it until I met him. And we did just like a quick little diagnostic, assessment. And it was like, oh, that's why my grip strength has been bothering me so much. Huh? So yeah, well, let's just get into it. Enough of me jabbering away here. Anything else to say before we get started? If you have not been over to pickleballrecovery.com yet, please take a journey over there. All kinds of great products, all kinds of great discounts on recovery products there, and a pretty awesome blog, if I may say so myself. I'm writing every week on different products and different practices. And, in my journey to kind of take care of my own body, I'm learning a lot of stuff along the way, and I'm passing it on to you. So you're never too late. It's never too late to learn about the human body. It's amazing. And the science changes. So, for a lot of us, when we were growing up, we were told A, B, and C about health and wellness. And, science comes along and, research comes along and refutes what we knew. I mean, how many of your parents smoked while they were pregnant with you? You know what I'm saying? Like, this stuff changes over time. So it's any of us who are, 40 and above, like a lot of the best practices around health and fitness have evolved. And we need to kind of update our, our knowledge base. And that's what I'm here to help you with. So go over to pickleballrecovery.com and check out the knowledge base there for you under the blog, and check out the products and the discounts that are available to you. Okay. All right. Well, let's go. Sit back, relax, enjoy the ride, and I'll see you on the other side. Justin Freed, welcome to Pickleball Recovery.
Tim, excited to be on. Honored that you would have me on. I think it's been a long time coming. I remember when I first met you at my very first PPA event in outside of Scottsdale back in February. We hit it off instantly. And you told me about this podcast, and here we are in the middle of May or towards the end of May, and we finally made it happen. We got our schedules to work.
Yeah, yeah. It's tricky getting people, like we're busy guys. So, we made it work. And we had to do it over Zoom.
I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
likewise. And it's all good. For a long time, I was doing these live in person because I just love the interaction. But like, as we met and when we were hanging out in Newport, even though we were both in our booths and we could see each other over a 3-day period, the amount of free time, either of us had to sit down and do this was pretty much none. So this is really,
it was fairly limited.
yeah. So this is really the way to do it. So this is great. So for those of you who are listening in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you are, you're not watching this. We're on Zoom today, connecting, and we're talking because when Justin and I met, I was at the AlloMD booth, which is now the Ultimate Repair X booth, and he walked up with this like arm thing on, which I am now wearing myself, which you can't see if you're listening. And I was instantly like curious, like, hey, brother, what you got there? Because this is, my jam is to, everybody who's over 40 who's on a pickleball court is wearing some kind of armor. And so I hadn't,
absolutely.
right. So I hadn't seen that one yet. And I was like, ooh, what you got? And then you were like, oh, it happens to be mine. And I was just like, oh, even cooler. Tell me more. And so that's how we got started. And it wasn't until you actually put one on me, though, that I really, took notice. And the reason why is like any product, some products people rave about, and then someone else tries it and they're like, oh, I didn't really notice anything. When you put this on my arm, you had kind of just gently touched my forearm, and you were like, well, if you got tennis elbow, you're going to feel some tenderness here. If you got carpal tunnel, you're going to feel some tenderness here. And if you have golfer's elbow, you're going to feel some tenderness here. I used to have golfer's elbow when I played golf. I knew exactly what that was like. But what was funny was when you pressed on not only tennis elbow, but on carpal tunnel, I responded, like I felt pain. And if you had asked me, do you ever struggle with carpal tunnel? I'd be like, yeah, luckily I've never had a problem with that. I had no idea that was sitting, under the surface, like right under the surface. And all you had to do is just go boink. And it was like, it lit up.
Very gentle touch.
Right. And so it wasn't like you were breaking my arm. It was a gentle touch, and there it was. And I remember you put this on. I went to shake your hand, and I noticed immediately I could shake your hand, one, without pain, and two, I could actually like grip. Like I felt like I could grip, like, and what you didn't know was like I had been complaining to my trainer for the last couple of months that my grip strength in my right hand, like every time I go to grip the paddle or I go to shake someone's hand, I have this just like weakness perception. And he would like, we'd do like the grip tests, and he's like, I don't know, man, you're okay. And I'm like, I can tell you it's not okay. Every time I shake someone's hand, I notice every time.
No one's going to know that as well as you.
No, right? Your body, especially as an athlete, your body. And so it was fascinating that as soon as you put the device on me, and then I shook your hand to say thanks, I was like, whoa, what just happened? And so you had been telling me about it in the booth, but once I felt the difference for myself, then I was like, okay, game on. Now we're going down the rabbit hole here. So to everybody who's like, this is me just setting up why we're going to nerd out for the next 30 minutes on this, because it's made an immediate, instant impact on my quality of life on and off the court. So now let's kind of like go way back to the beginning and tell the audience, kind of like your dad's story, your story. Let's give it a little bit of context. You as an athlete, as a high level athlete, and then your dad as a medical professional, and then connecting those two journeys into where you are today.
Well, Tim, first and foremost, you just made my day. Hearing stories like that, success stories, really is one of the primary impetuses and motivators for me to do what I do every single day. I love hearing those types of stories, and it's very similar to that of my own. And to your points, oftentimes, and I think we had tested our new therapeutic exercise ball with your Proband that day,
Yep.
just to get and activate and enhance the technology from those Probands. But yeah, we've for over 30 years have heard from people that not only does it help mitigate the inflammation and the pain associated with it, but they have improved grip strength. We hear that from golfers, from tennis players, pickleball players. So just know that that's not an uncommon result of wearing the product. But I have to say, it fires me up. Every time I hear stories like that, which is on a daily basis, fortunately, it just adds fuel to the fire that gets me going every single day. We always say what we try to do in Proband is to motivate and inspire people to know that we could help be a solution, and then we just try to educate and inform them as to how and why. And oftentimes people don't know that these ailments are laying below the surface, and they don't know until it gets so bad that they need to go see a doctor. So that's where the education and informative component comes in. And I really love everything that you've been doing, trying to help people realize here are the types of ailments that you could be getting, or here's what you're doing to your body. And these are excellent tools to help you recover, to stay in the game and stay in motion. Because as athletes, we understand how much we rely upon being able to go out and engage in these activities to help us, perform in all aspects of life at our highest of levels. But so in short, I appreciate hearing your testimonial and your story.
Right on.
And now to answer your questions. Yeah, so my father was a consultant for the Davis Cup team back in the 90s and 2000s. Before that, he got his went to UCLA Medical School, did his residency at Duke, had served in the Army, was stationed down in Panama, where they had a few tools to be able to triage people, which, my father, as it is, his baseline is, very much an outside of the box cerebral thinker, and always has regarded himself as a healer, not just a doctor. And, when he was down in Panama, oftentimes he would have to triage people and only had his observations through touching people, through, his eyes, how they walked, how they moved. That's how he had to evaluate with limited resources down there. So I think his background really helped him to think outside of the box, because when he invented his very first widget, which was actually for Pete Sampras, he was sent to my father for a second opinion because he had severe carpal tunnel. He had trouble finishing. My father said he couldn't even finish a tournament because it would get so severe that his grip strength would diminish and he'd be in so much pain. And so he was looking to have surgery on his wrist, which is the referred pain oftentimes that people get from carpal tunnel. So you see people wearing, devices that will immobilize their wrist, or, they'll say like, we just need to rest and it'll go away. The truth is the underlying ailment is always right at in that spot. You need to address it. So the technology we have for all of our products is anatomically focused dynamic compression. It's anatomically focused in that it pinpoints the origin of the inflammation and pain and addresses it using your own body's natural movements to create essentially a pumping mechanism to increase blood flow and circulation, to pump out inflammation that you have right at its source. So he invented his very first product, which, this is from my own private collection. This is the first iteration of the Bandit.
No
As
way.
you can see, it's got it's got some grass on it because I was doing some weed whacking the last time I wore it. And then the one you have is the second generation. This is the Bandit XM, which is an enhancement to the original Bandit. It has two very powerful magnetic heads pointed at one another, which helps increase or which can help improve healing times. And I can tell you, and we could get into the depths of that, I've been wearing the regular Bandit on my forearm, which is really helpful. But I switched over to the Bandit XM, the product that you're wearing, and I felt increased recovery and results. And then his second invention was,
Before you
this
go
is
on,
where my story comes.
before you go on, I'm so curious about Pete Sampras. So, because that's like
So
a,
yeah,
anyone, most people who come from pickleball have some, knowledge of this other sport out there. I don't know what it's called.
tennis.
It's rhymes with Dennis. Yeah. Yeah. So Pete is like incapacitated from carpal tunnel. He's referred to your dad because he's considering surgery on his wrist. And your dad
Correct.
says,
So, and I appreciate you stopping me there. My father, his passion in life is just to help people and to heal people.
yeah,
And frankly, early on when he first started inventing these products, there was a lot of politics associated within the orthopod or medical community about this because for a relatively inexpensive cost, you could mitigate having to go in and have an expensive surgery. Which I don't know if you've ever had a surgery, Tim. I've had 8. During the course of my football career, I really played the sport with a lot of ferocity,
right.
and it's already a very aggressive sport, and unfortunately, did a lot of damage to my body. But in any event, the bottom line is your body's never anatomically the same after surgery. So it always should be the very last case scenario that you go to, and any doctor who doesn't have that philosophy, you should be a little bit concerned. You may want to get a second opinion.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll
But
say it
so
for
yeah,
you. I'll say it for you. Run, don't walk to the next doctor.
exhaust all other options is
There
my
you go.
point.
There you go.
Um, but so yeah, my father, like I said, is an outside the box thinker. I remember I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and I still have a very distinct memory. I remember he was in our garage. He had made a plastic or plaster mold, got a plastic sheet and a heat gun, and assembled his first prototype. He put it on, Pete. And actually, if you go to our website, proband.com, and you go to our story, you can see the picture of the two of them with Pete wearing, once we actually got it into production, one of their very first bandits. Um, in any event, Pete ended up playing 2 weeks later, won his first Grand Slam, never had to have surgery, finished the tournament, obviously, to win the Grand Slam. And that's when we knew we had, something to run with. So we started with that first product. And the next product was invented for another, as you say, you want athlete in the same sport. And that was Mark Philipposis, who had severe patellar tendinopathy, I believe. And he invented the Need It, which straps around the back of your knee. Same technology of the anatomically focused dynamic compression. It actually leverages the hamstring tendons, giving intermittent compression, where you feel that same pumping mechanism to milk out inflammation while also doing patella tracking. It's fantastic for folks with osteoarthritis, patellar tendinopathy, also known as jumper's knee, chondromalacia, also known as runner's knee. And in my case, when I was playing football at UCLA, I remember, and I think, Tim, you could appreciate this. I think I'll get into the weeds of it because I know you'll appreciate it. I remember, I was when you're playing football at a school like UCLA at a high level, you're basically demanding 60 hours a week of pretty rigorous training.
Wow.
Whether it's in the weight room, whether it's out on the field. I mean, you're looking at anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a day of just physical exertion and activities, and then there's those of us like myself who wanted to push myself even harder to be better than I was the day before. And I remember I was in the best shape of my life. I think it was like somewhere between 202 and 212. It would fluctuate with like 6% body fat. And while some of my teammates were down taking, their spring break right before spring ball, I was up in Santa Barbara running stadiums in the morning to the point where I'd get back in the car and the foot would be like shaking as I was pushing on the gas.
Sure.
I'd fill up a trash can filled with ice and water, immerse myself and do a plunge, up to my chest for 20 minutes, let my body thaw out, take a hot shower a couple hours later, eat something, and would be back, in the gym, training really hard. And, we get into spring ball, and, I'm feeling the results of my efforts, and was making my way up the depth chart. I was a walk on, and who unfortunately had shown to be pretty injury prone. But we have new coaching staff. Everyone kind of had a blank slate because in athletics it's kind of capitalism at its finest. It's what can you do for me today?
Yep.
And if you're injured, we're not going to invest the reps in you. We're going to put them in someone else who could be more reliable. So every time I got hurt, it was like I dropped down to the bottom of the depth chart, and I had to,
Yep.
fight my way back up every single day. And anyway, I was playing at a really high level. Had been getting first team reps, starting reps, and was doing a routine move on AstroTurf, where I'd kind of run at a guy, fake really heavily out to the outside so that he would open up his hips and try to influence me out, sink my foot in the ground, pivot on a 90-degree and go underneath and be wide open as a running back running an option route. And it was kind of his primary job was to make sure I did not do that. And so
Right.
I had a lot of fun, given that he was our best linebacker, doing it to him every time, and but this one time my cleat stuck in that turf. Generally where you'd pivot on the ball of your foot didn't happen. So it all happened in my knee, and all that force and velocity and torque went right into the knee joint. Boom, it popped.
Yoink.
He actually fell going the other way. I fell going in the direction I was cutting, but I felt the pop. I got up, I caught the ball, ran for a touchdown. And as I'm running back, I'm like, ooh, man, that does not feel good. I couldn't cut to my left at all for the rest of practice. And, I don't think I wanted to believe in my head that I had a severe injury. So I mentioned it to, the training staff. Hey, I felt the pop, and it's pretty hard to pivot to my left. And at the time, swelling and bruising wasn't something that happened to me very often. So it wasn't very swollen. And, the next day I go to take my very first rep, which was on air. You have the offense and you're doing team takeoff where you go on air, and I'm cutting hard to my left, and I'm running back, and the head athletic trainer says, Justin, what's going on? And I said, man, my knee is killing me. And I pulled up my pant leg. The thing was the size of a volleyball. So he pulled me. We got, an MRI on it. Turned out I blew out my knee. One of the primary issues was how severely I tore my meniscus. Went in and had surgery. It was not a successful surgery. So I had a second surgery, which was marginally more successful. And to make a long story short, they felt it was best for longevity that I medically retire, which was devastating to me because it was a lifelong dream to play football at UCLA. And I ended up having bilateral surgery, full reconstruction of my knee, which my father actually performed.
Wow.
About 8 months later. And, frankly, I should have had him do it from the very beginning. But, I think a 20-year-old kid at the time, 21-year-old kid, somewhere in that range. And I felt responsible that, I wouldn't want to put that kind of pressure on him.
Right.
Of course he could handle it. Yeah, of course he could handle it. But so my own story with it, Tim, is, I wore our products when we were doing Olympic lifting on the forearms, and it was really helpful in making sure that I kind of proactively got ahead of, epicondylitis, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, or carpal tunnel. And if I didn't, sometimes I'd feel severe pain in my hands and my fingers and my wrist. And, to perform at a high level, you got to make sure you're doing all the things proactively to make sure you don't get to that point so you can perform. But I always had this sense where I had to, even after my third and fourth knee surgeries, that it was just arduous doing the normal things that I would do, whether it be walk, getting up to walk to grab something out of the refrigerator, let alone walking across UCLA's campus. It was pretty agonizing, and we all potentially could build up a high pain threshold, but that doesn't mean that the pain's not there and it's not wearing on you.
Yep.
And, I remember one day I was like, I'm going to give this thing a shot. And I put the kneaded on and instantly found immediate relief going up and down stairs. Found that as I wore it, I was feeling less and less pain because it was taking some of that shock absorption off of my meniscus.
Nice.
I had severe patellar tendinopathy, and it was really working to pump out that inflammation, in the front of my knee. It got me to a point where I could actually strengthen and rehab in a pretty serious way. My lower extremities, my legs, my knees, my quads, my hamstring, everything around it, my calf, everything. And I was, I just, walked and graduated, but I had 3 classes left to get the credentials you see back here from UCLA. And, I was able to get back and do some physical activities. I was playing basketball in the John Wooden Center, which is, well known for really good pickup basketball games, and really enjoyed playing, basketball. And our head football coach at the time, Rick Neuheisel, walks into the gym and sees me in there in fairly decent shape. And he goes, "Justin, man, you look like you're staying in pretty good shape." And I said, "Well, I'm trying to stay athletic." And he goes, "What are you up to? And how have you been?" I said, "Well, I'm just wrapping up my last courses here next week. And then I'm off into the real world." And he goes, "How's your knee?" And I sprung up and I dunked the basketball. And he goes, "Whoa." Like, and the next day, Timmy calls me. He goes, "Hey, we had a running back transfer. We need a guy. And you're literally all I've been thinking of." He says, "I don't know how we'll do it. But I just need to know, would you even consider it?" You'd have, and I fell back in my seat and I said, "Coach, it would be an honor of a lifetime to be able to go out on my own 2 feet." He goes, "Come meet me at 6 a.m. We'll figure out a way to make it happen. I don't know how we'll do it yet, but we'll figure out a way to make it happen." And, needless to say, I was so anxious. I didn't sleep all night. I go in, I end up having to drop all of my classes, which required me then to stay essentially for 2 more quarters, which, might as well pull my teeth. And, I passed my physical and was on the field that night, and was named ultimately at the end of the season most inspirational player. So I
No way.
attribute a lot of that to, yeah, I attribute it a lot of that to, our own products. And it's why I felt so passionate about, purchasing the remaining part of the company out. And it's a passion project, for me to be able to hear stories like the one you first mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. And it's just something I want to be able to share with so many people who are dealing with ailments and they may not know that there is a solution for them.
Yep. Yep. That's an amazing story. Holy cow. Congratulations on just having that experience, being able to have,
Thank you.
adversity primes us, and is what strengthens us. I mean, that's what resistance training is. It's,
Absolutely.
we grow mentally, physically, socially, spiritually under stress. And,
Yes.
it's like, you can't go back and change things because that's not how it works. You can just go forward from where you are. And so
Absolutely.
putting that product on just to make life easy for you, and then choosing to live like an athlete, which is, how do I get the best out of this machine that I've been blessed with?
Yeah.
And
Right.
your coach just taking notice, and then you being ultimately rewarded for that, is just a super, super cool story. And I think for all of us as athletes, when something works for us, like, that's the test, and it worked for me, let's go and try it, is the only, it's like the only thing
Right.
you can say to people is like, try it, it may work for
Right.
you too. And here's why it works. If you have to explain to people why things work. It's not like, well, I believe in it. you
Right.
know,
Exactly.
there,
No, there's
there,
there's actual science behind it. Yeah.
that helps,
I find oftentimes, it's funny because I remember when you and I first talked, we kind of got into the weeds really quickly on it. I think I was wearing both the one on my forearm and the one on my knee when we met, but it was
Yep.
under my pant leg. And and I, we just started kind of geeking out on the technology behind it. And I,
Yep.
in contrast, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I remember at Newport, so 3, 4 months later after we first met, I kind of got into the weeds of how something works. I think it's important people cognitively understand how it works, because the application of the product, making sure that everything is symmetrical and equidistant with the dual anatomic plates on the forearm, having the strap being equidistant on either side. Same thing with the kneaded, same thing with the ankle. Yep, you got it perfect.
Just showing the people, who are watching this on YouTube that, it hugs you from both sides. And so here's a thing that I want to transition into, which is there are other products on the market. I've seen other bands
Yeah.
on forearms and below the kneecap. And
Yep.
when I tell people about this one, they're like, "Oh, I've tried that." I'm like, "No, you haven't. You've tried something else."
Right.
But can you,
Absolutely. So
right. So describe for us the difference between specifically what your product does versus other products on the market. And we're not here to bash other products. We're really here to just articulate what makes
of course,
Proband unique.
absolutely. So all of our products actually work with your own natural body's movement to decompress the area in which it's on, to leverage its movements to create a pumping mechanism to milk out inflammation and actually treat the ailment. Oftentimes, and we have intellectual property protections on all of our widgets or products. So those of whom try to emulate what we do, it's actually a very different technology. And often what it does is kind of manipulate what your brain thinks. So for example, people will wear something like you had mentioned on their forearm. Your epicondyle is here and here. So this would be golfer's elbow. This would be tennis elbow. And the inflammation really starts here or here on the inside of the elbow. What
And
they'll
for
do is try to
people,
manipulate.
for
Yeah.
people listening, as you're pointing this out on YouTube, tennis elbow is usually on the outside of the elbow and golfer's elbow is usually on the
Yes.
inside. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So absolutely. Thank you for clarifying. So oftentimes what you get is almost a straight, band,
Yep.
which its intent is to kind of manipulate where your brain thinks the insertion of that tendon is, being further up the arm. But what it ends up with so you may find a little bit of relief while you're wearing it, but as soon as you take it off, the pain and the ailment are still as prevalent, if not more, than they were before you put it on. Beyond that, they also tend to work like tourniquets, so they don't, they'll inhibit blood flow, which, as you well know, you need to have that blood and oxygen flow through that area to promote healing. And so I suppose there's a fairly significant contrast between our technology and what all the other brands use. For the knee, oftentimes it's a straight band that goes right underneath the patella. It doesn't actually give intermittent compression right on the soft tissue in the front of the knee. It doesn't actually leverage your hamstring tendons. It's there kind of. I like to call them like a band-aid for a more severe wound.
Right.
Uh, what other products do. And I don't know if I showed you the ankle bandit. This has been really popular in pickleball. A lot of people with ankle injuries, but it has two adjustable pads. So because there's the ankle joint's a very complex joint,
Yep.
but these two kind of go right underneath the tibial heads, your ankle bones,
Okay.
and the contour to the front of the pad in the front of your ankle. So when you strap it around your ankle, it actually decompresses every time you extend and dorsiflex the joint there, and the technology is the same every time you dorsiflex and extend your foot and your ankle. It provides that intermittent compression to pump out inflammation and swelling. So for someone who's dealing with chronic ankle sprains, arthritis, synovitis, it's very effective. But all of our technology works the same, and we're the only company that has this type of technology that leverages your own body's movements to pump out inflammation, relieving your pain, treating the ailment. and decompressing the area in which you're trying to get some support and help.
Nice. So here's a question that comes to mind. So will I be wearing this, like, do you find, like, what do you find with do your symptoms come and go? Are you feeling that you need to wear your braces all the time? Like, what's been your kind of use history?
Great question. So, I'm turning 35 next week. I've been an athlete my whole life.
It's all downhill. Just
but
kidding. Just kidding.
I,
Best years are ahead of
hey,
you.
listen, I was going to say it's all a matter. I'd say the good Lord didn't make me tall enough to look at the glasses half empty.
There you go.
I will say I certainly don't feel the same way I did as when I was 20.
Yep.
But I'm trying to do my part to make sure that my body is functional. I don't have kids yet, and I'm looking forward to it. So I would say the experience is different. It depends on the severity, for one, but two, know what it is that may they're for repetitive stress injuries. So anytime anyone is doing anything, with repetitive action or motion, in my case with the knee, that I have now both patellar tendinopathy and osteoarthritis just from, have been 15 years removed from the severe knee injury I had. And it works for both. So generally, if I'm out and about and I plan on being on my feet regularly, or if I'm going to go play pickleball, or if I'm going to go play basketball, did both last week actually on Sunday. Played pickleball and with some of my old football teammates at UCLA, and they've been playing a lot longer than I had, but I worked them up and down the court. So they said, okay, let's play basketball now, and still didn't work out quite as well for them. But I wore our knee product there. With the ones on the forearms, I also like to kind of empirically treat an ailment I know I am prone to having. So, Tim, if I'm out mowing the lawn, I've got a bandit on both of my forearms. I've got a kneaded on my bad knee. So I do wear them that way, but I'll give you a different example. I think it was my second PPA event. My very first activation with Proband was out in Holly Hills. And I struck up and had a really good conversation with Etta Wright. And it was just a wonderful person, by the way. I really think very highly of her character, and was really impressed with her. We got into a conversation. She went to BYU in Hawaii, and lives in Utah. And I said, it's so funny. We played when I was at UCLA playing football. I said we played against SC, we played against University of Texas, Tennessee. We've gone all over the country and played in some very hostile environments. I said never once had, or I wouldn't say never once. I would say that the meanest fans we ever played against were the BYU fans, and I was like, man, that's not what I would have expected, right? And so that's how our conversation started. She was wearing, it's a relatively new company, and I'm actually not super familiar with what their technology is or how it works, but she was wearing an Incrediwear sleeve.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Just kind of from here to
Yep.
here.
Yep.
And she said she'd been dealing with lateral epicondylitis, tennis or pickleball elbow for a few months, and had been trying the product. I said, well, she goes, well, what are you doing here? And I told her, what we did. And she goes, well, that's what I've got going on. And I was like, why don't you try one of ours? So like you, I gave her our Banded XM. She wore it the rest of the day. I think this was probably around 1:00. So she wore it for the rest of the games that she had. And then I, through practice that evening, the next day I ran into her and Lacey Schneeman, and I said, Etta, how'd it go? Like, how's your arm? And she goes, I'm not wearing anything right now because I wore it for the rest of the day and through practice, and my pain's gone. I was thrilled to hear that. So my point is, I'm giving you two very different examples. I'm sure a little bit older, or quite a bit older than Etta. I don't know that to be sure. But two, I also know what it is that may inflame these ailments, and I try to wear the products while I'm doing them to mitigate against them happening. And that's worked pretty well for me. But in the case of someone like Etta Wright, she'd been dealing with tennis elbow for a few months, had great success with the Proband Banded XM. and the next day she wasn't wearing anything at all. So,
Amazing.
you really had both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I'm also thinking about, for my listeners are typically 40 plus, not always, but typically, because that's who I'm focusing on, because we still think young, but our body just isn't young, right? So there's this
I
like
could relate. Yeah.
disconnect between what we think we can do and what we can actually do, and it's quite frustrating, frankly. And like
Yeah.
I'm recovering from a concussion and a neck injury, and I want to go back out on the court and play. I can't, but my 19-year-old inner athlete is like, go, 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 but luckily I'm
I
old
hear
enough
you.
now with the wisdom to know, no, 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 that would be a
Right.
bad idea. Right. So, but it is challenging because a lot of the injuries are overuse injuries in pickleball and for
Yeah.
people who are 40 plus. And so I'm thinking for a lot of people that might be struggling with golfers, tennis elbow, but particularly with carpal tunnel, they may still be working full time and or part time, and they're still playing pickleball as a hobby. And like I'm
Right.
sitting in front of a computer right now. You're sitting in front of a computer. I have a mouse to my right, and I have this keyboard that's not optimized for ergonomics in any way, shape, or form. And
Yep.
how many hours a day, am I sitting in this position activating, the carpal tunnel without even realizing it,
Yep.
um,
Absolutely.
I
That's a
have this
really
like,
good point,
I
Tim.
have a lumbar support because I was being seen by an orthopedic or one of my team at some point was like, you're not, when you sit, you slouch and you basically collapse
Right.
all the layers or all the,
Vertebrae.
your
Yeah.
vertebrae. And it's like, so we need you to be supporting your trunk all day while you're in front of
Right.
your computer. You're not thinking about it, but you're actually
Sure.
injuring yourself. And so I'm wondering if
It's
this is
true.
like if this is a smart thing for people who are still keyboard warriors by day, to be wearing one of these while they're at work to lower the
Yep.
inflammation before they even get to the court. Let's try to meet it where, if you're already inflamed and irritated, and then you go out and you play 3 hours of pickleball, right? And then you think it's just
Yeah.
the pickleball. The
Right.
pickleball may be the straw that's breaking the camel's back, but it may be the X number of hours that you're doing your other activities of daily living that might be triggering it. And
You're
so,
you're Tim, not might, you're 100% correct. And it's a very smart observation for you to have. Oftentimes, I mean, they call it keyboard elbow too. I mean, so there's a lot of common vernacular layman's terms that they attribute to the ailment. Its scientific name is lateral or medial epicondylitis and carpal tunnel syndrome. But yeah, what you just said is really smart. Just like, you know, to a degree, I spent a little less time at a keyboard than maybe perhaps my wife,
mhm,
or texting on my phone. I'm like you. I like to have face to face interactions. I like to have phone calls with people because at the very least you're interacting that way. So I'm fortunate that I'm able to interact or interface that way. And it might just because I'm stubborn and that's the way I want to communicate with people, not necessarily through a text or an email. It does also at the same time keep me talking almost all day, so which could be exhausting. um, but with all that being said, it's similar to what I'm saying when I'm mowing the lawn. I'm wearing on both forearms.
yep,
When my wife is driving, because a lot of people get what they call driver or trucker's elbow. Again, it's the same ailment from the steering wheel,
interesting.
especially if you're driving long distances or for long periods of time. But we found, so we were established in 1992. This is our 31st year in business, and we've been recognized by industry leaders as the top physiotherapy and orthopedic solutions provider for many years running now.
Nice.
But she wears it. She wears it. When I say she, my wife, and I'm just giving this example because I live with her.
Yep.
Um, she wears it when she's texting, and she will wear it on both arms. She wears it when she's typing. Sometimes she wears it when she's driving if it's really inflamed. And that's the Proband Bandit or Bandit XM. She likes the XMs, the product you're wearing.
Nice.
And sometimes if it's really bad, because she's a grinder. I mean, she works really hard. She'll go 12, 15, 18 hours a day and just keep pushing, and basically all she does is sleep. If it's an 18-hour day, then that's I've got to make sure that I'm making her breakfast in bed or something. But like, because she needs her 8 hours of sleep. Anyway, I think that's a really smart observation. A lot of people, it's important to be mindful of anything that essentially creates the movements in your forearm, because
Okay.
this is going to be far more exaggerated than this.
Yep.
But it's the aggregate and accumulation of those movements that really create that inflammation. And
Yep.
so it's a really smart observation.
Death by 1,000 cuts, as they say. Right?
Yeah,
It's not any one big thing. It's just an accumulation of a lot of little things that irritate something.
Correct.
To the point of awareness. And I think that's where we started the conversation, and where we're going to kind of wrap it up today, which is that if you have awareness of pain, it's already been growing under your perception or your awareness for some time. You don't go from zero to awareness. There's subclinical pain, and being an athlete and having professional hands on my body, touching hot spots that I didn't even know I had, right? I'm going through that right now with my neck. Like, the physio goes to touch my cervical vertebrae, and it's like pressing hot buttons, they just touch it, and it's like, zzz, ow. Like, what are you doing? Like, what do you have, needles on your fingers? And they're like, no. But it's there, it's right there under the surface. And that was my experience with you in the booth, was your thumb just went right in, and you weren't trying to get any passwords out of me. You were just kind of touching the forearm, and there I went down. I was like, oh, okay. All right. So for those of you who are listening, listen, if you're already feeling fatigue or irritation in your elbow or in your knees, like, it's already there. The fire's been growing and burning for some time. So where do people find out about Proband online? Tell us about websites, socials. Give us all the skinny.
Sure. So we have proband.com, proband.com is an excellent resource. We have how-to videos on there that we produced that show you how to put on the product correctly for maximum efficacy, and to a degree go into the technology without getting super wonky or nerdy like you and I may want to get, Tim. There's a lot of information there. And then on our social media, we, with the intent of again, really educating and informing and motivating and inspiring folks, we produce quite a bit of content on Proband Sports is the handle on Instagram and on Facebook. So
awesome.
That's how you can get some more information and stay engaged.
Awesome. And you can go to pickleballrecovery.com as well, and you will see Justin's products on there, because we're very excited to feature your Proband products and share them with our family here in the pickle sphere. So Justin, thanks so much for joining us on Pickleball Recovery. It's been great having you.
Tim, my absolute pleasure. And let me know if you ever want to have me back on. Otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing you sometime out there on the pickleball court soon.
Sounds good.
All right, pal.
Thanks so much for listening. Did you know there's one place on the web for all your recovery needs? It's at www.pickleballrecovery.com. You'll find all the products I personally use and recommend, along with exclusive discounts on many of them, as well as my blog, where I help you make sense out of all the different products and practices out there to keep you moving and feeling better so you play better. After all, your body is the most expensive piece of equipment you own. Also, do you want to know the number one mistake picklers make that leads to increased pain, soreness, stiffness, and injury? Just head over to pickleballrecovery.com and download my free guide to playing with less pain and more enjoyment. Listen, pickleball makes us feel young at heart, but not young in body. So go download my free guide at www.pickleballrecovery.com. See you next time.